Hi, I'm Adam. I am the first breath ever drawn, the first heartbeat in the silence of a brand new world. I remember the warm soil and the moment my eyes opened to the face of the Creator. I had a garden of infinite peace, until I chose a moment of pride and greed over an eternity of presence. I know what it's like to lose a paradise you didn't value. I see that same hunger in your eyes today. But even after the fall, he never stopped looking out for Eve and me. My story isn't about the fruit, it's about my God who trades our shame for his grace. You are a masterpiece, carrying the very breath he gave me. Don't wait to lose your world to find the one who made it. He's still calling your name just like he did mine, and he loves you.
Hi, I'm Eve. I am the mother of every tear you've cried and every dream you've ever chased. I remember the first time I felt the sun. It felt like a promise. But I was the one who reached for more, thinking wisdom was something I could steal, only to realize that true knowing comes from walking beside him, not trying to be him. I've carried the weight of that choice through every generation, feeling your heartaches as if they were my own. But the thorns in your life don't mean he's left you. He took the very consequence of my mistake and turned it into a path back home. You are a living legacy of mercy, proof that life can grow even in the harshest wilderness. He's still reaching out his hand, just like he did for me.
Hi, I'm Cain. I am the first man to walk a path of shadows, the first to know the cold sting of a brother's absence. I remember the sweat of the fields and the burning frustration of a heart that felt ignored. I thought my anger would set me free, but I learned that when you strike down another, you only bury a piece of yourself. I've wandered the earth as a restless nomad, carrying a mark I can't wash away. But even in my exile, the Creator did not leave me to the wolves. He marked me, not just for my sin, but for my protection. My story isn't about the murder. It's about a God who offers mercy even to the wanderer. Don't let your anger become your anchor. He's still watching over the broken, just like he did for me.
Hi, I'm Abel. I am the first shepherd, the first to find peace in the quiet company of the flock under a vast, open sky. I remember the joy of bringing my best to the Creator, not because he needed it, but because my heart simply wanted to say, thank you. I was the first to cross the veil, leaving the fields of earth for the presence of the one who made them. Though my time was short and my end was silent, my blood still speaks a story of faith that death could never quiet. I want you to know that your worth isn't measured by how long you live, but by the love you offer while you're here. My story isn't about the tragedy. It's about the beauty of a life fully given. Don't wait for a better time to give him your heart. He treasures your worship, just like he treasured mine.
Hi, I'm Seth. I am the third son, the one born into a house of mourning to carry a flickering candle of hope. I grew up in the shadow of a brother I never knew and the grief of a brother who fled. I watched my father, Adam, grow old, his eyes always longing for a garden he could never re-enter. But in my time, something beautiful happened. We began to call upon the name of the Lord again. I learned that God doesn't just replace what is lost, he redeems it. My story isn't about being the replacement, it's about being the bridge to a future grace. Your past doesn't have to be your heritage. He can start a new lineage through you, just like he did with me.
Hi, I'm Enoch. I am the man who vanished, not into the earth, but into the heart of the one who made it. While the world around me grew loud and dark, I found a rhythm in the silence, a steady walk with my Creator. We talked for 300 years, sharing secrets of the stars and the soul, until one day, the walk just didn't end. He looked at me and said, we're closer to my house than yours. And I simply kept going. I want you to know that God isn't a distant judge. He is a friend who longs for your company. My story isn't about escaping death. It's about the power of intimacy. Don't just follow his rules. Walk with him. He's waiting for you to start, just like I did.
Hi, I'm Methuselah. I am the oldest man to ever walk the earth, a living bridge between the world that was and the world that would be. I watched 969 years pass like shadows on a wall. People think my long life was a miracle, but it was actually a message, a long, patient pause of God's mercy. He waited for a world that wouldn't listen, holding back the storm until my final breath. My name meant, when he dies, it shall be sent, and when I closed my eyes, the windows of heaven opened. Even when judgment seems certain, his heart is always holding out for one more soul. My story is about the depth of his patience. Don't mistake his silence for absence. He is waiting for you to come home, just like he waited for them.
Hi, I'm Noah. I remember the smell of pitch and the ache in my hands, but mostly the silence of a God who told me to build a sanctuary for a world that didn't want one. I watched the door close, and for 40 days, the only thing louder than the storm was the heartbeat of my family inside. Then, I saw the first rainbow, a promise in light that the water would never win again. God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the one who simply says yes. My story isn't about the ark. It's about a God who provides a way through the flood. Build your life on his word, even if the sky is clear. He is your safety, just like he was mine.
Hi, I'm Shem. I am the son who stayed close to the heart of the promise. I remember the world before the water, the noise, the violence, and the moment the door of the ark finally shut. I lived for 500 years after the flood, watching the earth turn green again and watching my children's children fill the plains. I saw the tower rise at Babel and the languages shatter into 1,000 pieces. But through it all, I held the mantle. From my line, the tent of Abraham would be pitched, and the King of Peace would eventually come. My story is about the quiet power of faithfulness over centuries. You don't always have to be the pioneer to be the protector of the truth. Stay steady in the calling God gave your fathers. He is the God of generations, just like he was for me.
Hi, I'm Ham. My name means hot or passionate, and my life was a fire that burned in many directions. I survived the greatest judgment the world had ever seen, only to falter in a moment of dishonor inside my father's tent. I've known the weight of a curse and the struggle of a family divided by a single mistake. But look at what grew from my line: the great cities of Egypt, the empires of Canaan, and the warriors of Cush. My descendants built the civilizations that challenged the world and shaped history. My story is a reminder that our actions have echoes and our choices ripple through time. God sees the nations, and even in the struggle, his eye is on every tribe. Don't let a moment of weakness define your entire legacy. Honor what is holy, even when no one is looking. He is the judge of the earth, just like he was for me.
Hi, I'm Japheth. I am the son of the wide open spaces. My name means enlarged, and that is exactly what my life became. While my brothers stayed near the cradle of the ark, my heart pulled me toward the horizon, to the coastlands, the islands, and the distant mountains of the north and west. I remember the promise my father Noah gave me, that God would enlarge my territory and that I would eventually find rest in the tents of Shem. I am the father of the Greeks, the Romans, and the wanderers of Europe. I represent the beauty of a God who loves variety and distance. He is not a local God. He is the Lord of the entire map.
My story is about the blessing of expansion and the grace of being brought back home. Go as far as He calls you, but never forget the root of your faith. He is the God of the ends of the earth, just like He was for me.
Hi, I'm Abraham. I'm the man who walked away from the only home I ever knew, following a voice that promised me the stars while my arms were still empty. I spent a lifetime as a nomad, pitching tents in lands I didn't own, holding on to a covenant that defied nature itself. I've known the silence of the long wait and the terror of the ultimate test on a mountain called Moriah. But I learned that God's clock is never slow and His promises never fail. He doesn't just call you to a place, He calls you to a purpose. My story isn't about my greatness, it's about the greatness that keeps His word. Step out into the unknown if He's the one leading. He is your shield and your reward, just like He was mine.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm the woman who laughed in the shadows when I heard the impossible was finally coming to my door. I spent decades in the quiet ache of not yet, watching the years steal my youth while I waited for a miracle that seemed a lifetime late. I've known the bitterness of doubt and the struggle of trying to help God do what only He can do. But I am proof that nothing is too hard for the Lord. He turned my tears into laughter and my emptiness into a legacy. Your waiting room is not a graveyard. It is a womb for what is to come. My story is about the God who remembers the forgotten. Don't give up on the promise just because it's taking time. He is faithful, just like He was to me.
Hi, I'm Lot. I'm the man who chose the lush, green valleys of the world over the rugged mountains of faith. I remember standing with my uncle Abraham, looking at the land and choosing what looked good to the eye, never realizing that the richest soil can hide the deepest rot. I moved my tent closer and closer to the gates of Sodom until the city wasn't just around me, it was inside me. I lost almost everything in the fire: my home, my legacy, and the wife who couldn't stop looking back at what she loved more than her life. But even in my hesitation, God was merciful. He literally pulled me from the flames when I was too paralyzed to run. Grace isn't just for the perfect. It's for the compromised soul that finally cries out for rescue. My story is a warning that what glitters isn't always gold. Don't pitch your tent in a place that costs you your soul. He is the way out, just like He was for me.
Hi, I'm Abimelech. I was the king of Gerar, a man who almost fell into a trap of someone else's fear. Abraham told me Sarah was his sister, and in the integrity of my heart, I took her into my house. But God came to me in a dream, a terrifying, holy moment, and told me I was a dead man. I cried out, "Lord, will you slay a righteous nation?" I learned that even kings must bow to the truth. I restored Sarah, gave Abraham gifts, and sought his prayers. I discovered that God protects even those who don't yet fully know Him, if their heart is sincere. You can be right in your own eyes and still need His mercy. My story is about the power of an honest heart and a quick apology. Listen when He warns you in the night. He is the judge of the heart, just like He was for me.
Hi, I'm Melchizedek. I am the king of Salem and the priest of the Most High God, appearing like a sudden light in the middle of Abraham's journey. I have no recorded beginning and no end. I simply am, a shadow of the great high priest who was yet to come. I met Abraham in the Valley of the King after his great victory, bringing him bread and wine, not as a common meal, but as a sacred blessing. I saw the heart of the man who would be the father of nations, and I received his tithe because I serve the God who possesses heaven and earth. My story is a reminder that God has witnesses in places you've never visited. He is a king who provides and a priest who intercedes. Look for the bread and wine He offers in your moment of victory. He is the eternal King, just like he was for me.
Hi, I'm Hagar. I am the Egyptian woman who found herself caught in the middle of someone else's promise and someone else's mistake. I know what it feels like to be treated as a tool instead of a person, to be cast out into the heat of the desert with nothing but a crying child and a half-empty water skin. I sat in the sand, waiting for the end, believing I was invisible to the world. But in my lowest moment, a voice called my name. Not as a servant, but as a daughter. I discovered that no wilderness is too vast for his love to cross. I called him El Roy, the God who sees me, because he found me when I was lost to everyone else. My story is for anyone who feels used, forgotten, or tossed aside. You are not a mistake, and you are never truly alone. He sees you in your desert, just like he saw me.
Hi, I'm Ishmael. I am the first son of Abraham, born from a plan made in fear, but kept alive by a God of compassion. I remember the heat of the sun and the dry sand under my feet when the water ran out. I remember my mother's tears when she couldn't bear to watch me die in the wilderness. I felt cast aside, a boy caught between a promise and a mistake. But in the middle of my desert, God heard my cry. He didn't just give us a well, he gave us a future. He looked at the boy the world walked away from and whispered, "I will make you great too." My story isn't about being the chosen heir. It's about a God who sees the outcast and hears the voice of the suffering. You are never too far gone for his eyes to find you. He is the God who sees, just like he saw me.
Hi, I'm Isaac. I am the child of a miracle, born when the world said it was too late, carrying a name that means laughter. I remember the wood on my back and the fire in my father's hand, and the moment I realized that I was the one intended for the altar. But I also remember the voice from heaven and the ram in the thicket, the moment I learned that God is always our provider. My life was a quiet one, spent digging wells and walking in the fields at twilight, resting in a promise I didn't have to earn. You don't have to be the loudest to be the most loved. My story is about the peace of being provided for. Lay down your own efforts and trust his provision. He is your substitute, just like he was mine.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. I am the woman who left my home for a man I had never seen, led by a sign at a well and a heart that said, "I will go." I felt the struggle of two nations within my own womb, a wrestling that started before they were even born. I've known the weight of a secret and the high cost of helping God's plan along with my own hands. I saw the prophecy come true. The older would serve the younger, but it wasn't without the sting of a divided house. I learned that God's purposes are unshakable, even when we try to manipulate the outcome. My story is about the strength it takes to follow a calling, even when it's complicated. Don't be afraid.
Hi, I'm Esau. I'm the man who lived for the moment and lost the eternal. I remember the smell of the wild, the heat of the hunt, and that one afternoon when I was so hungry, I traded my entire birthright for a single bowl of stew. I walked in the door a firstborn son and walked out a stranger to my own inheritance. I've known the roar of a bitter cry and the fire of a grudge that lasted for decades. But I also discovered the power of letting go. When I finally saw my brother again, I didn't reach for my sword. I reached for his neck in an embrace. My story is a warning to value what is holy, but it's also a testament to the peace found in forgiveness. Don't trade your soul for something that only satisfies for a moment. There is a better hunger, just like I eventually found.
Hi, I'm Jacob. I spent half my life as a deceiver, running from the brother I tricked and the father I lied to. I've known the loneliness of a stone pillow and the ladder of angels in a dream. I spent 20 years working for a man who was just as clever as I was, learning the hard way that you reap exactly what you sow. But my life changed in the dark, by a river, when I wrestled with a stranger until daybreak. I wouldn't let go until he blessed me, I walked away with a limp, but a new name, Israel. God doesn't just want your service, He wants your surrender. My story proves that God can take a supplanter and turn him into a prince. Don't be afraid to wrestle with Him in your darkest night. He'll change your name, just like He changed mine.
Hi, I'm Leah. I spent a lifetime living in the shadow of my sister's beauty. I named my first 3 sons after my longing for my husband's heart. Reuben, because I hoped he'd finally see me. Simeon, because I felt unheard. And Levi, hoping we'd finally be joined. Later came Issachar and Zebulun, and my daughter Dinah. But my life changed with my 4th son, Judah. I stopped looking at man and looked up, saying, "This time I will praise the Lord." I discovered that being unloved by the world doesn't mean you are forgotten by the Creator. He gave me the lineage of the King of Kings. My story is for anyone who feels like second best. You are the chosen one in His eyes. He is your true reward, just like He was mine.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm the woman who was loved at first sight, the one for whom 7 years of labor felt like only a few days. I had the heart of my husband, but for so long, my arms remained empty while I watched my sister bear son after son. I wrestled with God, and in my desperation, I even clung to the old ways of my father. When we finally fled my father's house, I stole his household idols, hiding them beneath my saddle and lying to his face to keep them. I was still learning that you cannot hold on to the past while reaching for a promised future. I learned the hard way that even the greatest human love or earthly charms cannot fill a hole that only God can touch. When He finally remembered me, He gave me Joseph, a son who would save the world, and later Benjamin, though his birth cost me my life. I realized that God's timing isn't a denial, it's a preparation for something spectacular. My story is about the struggle of a heart that wants it all right now. Trust the one who holds the keys to the future. He remembers you, just like He remembered me.
Hi, I'm Bilha. I am the servant who became a mother in the middle of a war between 2 sisters. I was Rachel's handmaid, carrying the weight of her desperation and her dreams. I birthed Dan, whose name means justice, and Naphtali, named for the struggles we all endured under one roof. But my story is also shadowed by a moment of deep brokenness. After the death of my mistress Rachel, I was caught in a scandal that shook our family to its core. When Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, sinned by lying with me. It was a betrayal that cost him his birthright, and left a stain on my own journey. A reminder that even in a house of promise, there is room for great pain. Yet, I learned that God's grace is bigger than our darkest chapters. He didn't cast my sons out because of the sins of the house. He made them pillars of a nation. Your value isn't defined by the mistakes made by you, or against you. My story is for the ones who feel defined by their scars, or their silence. You are still a part of His grand design. He counts you in, just like He counted me. Hi, I'm Zilpah. I am the woman of the shadows, the handmaid of Leah. My hands were always busy, and my heart was always steady, even when I was caught in a family drama I didn't create. I gave my strength to build a house that wasn't my own. When I birthed Gad, Leah shouted, "What good fortune!" And when Asher arrived, she called him Happy. I saw those blessings in my sons' faces, even when my own life felt like a series of chores. I discovered that God's blessing isn't just found in the spotlight, it's found in the faithfulness of the everyday. He takes the humble and makes them essential. My story is about finding joy in a life of service. No act of faithfulness is too small for His notice. He rewards the steady, just like He rewarded me.
Hi, I'm Laban. I'm the man who met my match in my nephew Jacob. I spent my life building an empire in Haran, using every trick in the book to keep my daughters and my flocks close to me. I swapped Leah for Rachel in the dark, thinking I could control the destiny of a man God had already blessed. I chased after what I thought was mine, only to realize that you cannot stop a man whose time has come to leave. I've known the frustration of losing my household gods, and the hollow feeling of a Mizpah covenant made in tension rather than love. I learned that you can't out-scheme the Almighty. My story is a warning that greed is a lonely master. Don't let your desire for more cost you your family. Let go before the fire consumes what you've built. He is the true master, just like I eventually learn.
Hi, I am Reuben, the firstborn of Jacob. I was meant to be the beginning of my father's strength, but I threw it all away for a moment of pride and lust. In a reckless attempt to assert power, I went in and lay with Bilhah, my father's concubine. It was a sin that echoed through my entire lineage, costing me my birthright and my honor. When my brothers later plotted to kill Joseph, I tried to atone for my shame by saving him, but I was too weak to lead. I suggested the pit, hoping to rescue him later, but I returned to find him gone. I spent my life carrying the weight of a double failure: the sin against my father and the loss of my brother. I learned that birthright is a gift, but character is a choice. My story ends with this. Man's sin can cost him his earthly position, but God's mercy is the only thing that can redeem a fallen soul.
Hi, I'm Simeon, the second son. My life was defined by the sword and a temper that couldn't be tamed. I was the one who led the slaughter at Shechem. I was the one whose anger burned the hottest against Joseph. But years later, in an Egyptian palace, the tables turned. I was bound in chains while my brothers went free. In that dark cell, my pride finally met its match. God used the silence of the prison to speak to a heart that wouldn't listen in the light. I realized that my strength was actually my greatest weakness. My story ends with this. God breaks our earthly chains so that he can finally set our spirits free. Hi, I am Levi. Alongside my brother Simeon, my hands were once stained with blood and vengeance. My own father, Jacob, cursed my anger on his deathbed. I was scattered and divided. But look at the mercy of the Almighty. He took my scattered tribe and turned us into his priests. He took the hands that held a sword and taught them to hold the holy sacrifices. He didn't cancel my story. He redirected my zeal for his glory. If you think your past disqualifies you, look at me. My story ends with this. God doesn't call the holy. He takes the broken and makes them holy for his service.
Hi, I am Judah. For a long time, my life was a cycle of compromise and hidden shame. I was the one who suggested selling my own brother, Joseph, for 20 pieces of silver. Years later, I fell even deeper into darkness. After losing 2 sons to their own wickedness, I denied my daughter-in-law Tamar her rights. In my spiritual blindness, I ended up sinning with her, not realizing who she was until she produced the evidence of my own hypocrisy. That moment of exposure shattered my pride. I had to admit, she is more righteous than I. It was this humility that transformed me from a man of greed into a man of sacrifice. When Benjamin's life was on the line in Egypt, I didn't run. I offered my own life as a guarantee for his. Because of that transformation, God chose my broken line to become the royal line of Israel. It was from my descendants that the King of Kings would come. My story ends with this. God can take a life stained by scandal and make it the lineage of the Messiah, the true Lion of Judah.
Hi, I am Dan. Born of a handmaid, I spent my life fighting for a seat at the table. My name means he has judged, and I was the serpent, by the way, small but fierce. I watched the gates and protected the borders of our people. I learned that you don't need a high title to have a high calling. In a family of giants, I had to find my strength in the one who gave me my name. I realized that the only judgment that matters is the one from above. My story ends with this. When the world overlooks you, God is the one who vindicates you and gives you a place in his plan.
Hi, I am Naphtali. I am a doe set free, giving beautiful words. While my brothers fought with spears, I moved with the agility of the wind. My gift was communication and speed. I learned to navigate the high places and bring back reports that saved our family. I realized that the tongue can be a weapon of war or a tool for peace. I chose to use my freedom to run toward the light. If you feel like you don't fit the warrior mold, remember that God needs messengers too. My story ends with this. God gives us beautiful words so we can proclaim his beautiful works.
Hi, I'm Gad. My life was a constant raid. I was born into a troop of conflict, and I was attacked from every side. I know what it's like to be pushed back, to be outnumbered, and to feel like you're losing the war. But the prophecy over my life was this: I would overcome at the last. I learned that the middle of the battle isn't the end of the story. With God, a setback is just a setup for a comeback. My story ends with this. You may be raided by the world, but with God, you will always be the one who overcomes at the last.
Hi, I am Asher. My name means happy or blessed. My portion was rich, filled with olive groves and the finest wheat, bread fit for royalty. But I realized that physical abundance is a hollow blessing if the soul is starving. I learned to be a harbor for the hungry and a provider for the weary. I found that true happiness isn't found in what you consume, but in what you contribute to God's kingdom. Don't just seek the gift, seek the giver. My story ends with this. God doesn't give us abundance for our comfort, but so we can taste and see that the Lord is good.
Hi, I am Issachar. I saw that rest was good, and the land was pleasant, so I bowed my shoulder to bear the load. They called me a strong donkey between the sheepfolds. In a world that wants to be the master, I found the dignity of being a servant. I learned to understand the times and know what we ought to do. There is a deep wisdom found in the quiet labor of a faithful life. I didn't need the spotlight. I just needed the master's approval. My story ends with this. When we bow our shoulders to serve, we find that God is the one carrying the weight.
Hi, I am Zebulun. My home was by the sea, a haven for ships. I didn't wander the fields, I watched the horizons. I became the place where the weary traveler found safety after the storm. I learned that God needs people who can stay anchored when the waves get high. I wasn't just living by the water, I was living by the promise. I provided the path for the ships that would eventually carry the word to the world. My story ends with this. God is the ultimate harbor, and in him, every restless ship finds its rest.
Hi, I'm Joseph. I started as my father's favorite, wearing a coat of many colors that became a target for my brother's hatred. That jealousy threw me into a pit and sold me into Egyptian slavery. But even in chains, I found favor in Potiphar's house, until his wife's false accusations cast me into a dungeon for a crime I never committed. I spent years in the dark, forgotten by men, but never by my Lord. But in a single day, God lifted me from the prison floor to the right hand of Pharaoh. As ruler over all of Egypt, I gathered the grain that would save the world from a catastrophic famine. The most powerful moment wasn't the crown, but the day my brothers stood before me. As I wept so loudly all of Egypt heard it, I realized my pain had a purpose. God had sent me ahead to preserve life. Because of his plan, I was able to bring my father Jacob and my entire family out of poverty and into the safety of Goshen. I looked at the men who sold me and said, "You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good." My story ends with this. God's plan is bigger than your betrayal. He can use a famine to bring a family home and a prison to prepare a king.
Hi, I am Benjamin, the youngest. My mother's last breath named me Son of my sorrow, but my father renamed me Son of my right hand. I spent my life protected and shielded, the beloved of the Lord. I learned that we don't have to be defined by the pain of our birth or the labels of our past. We are defined by the Father's love. I am the one who dwells safely between his shoulders. My story ends with this. You may start in sorrow, but God always intends for you to finish at his right hand.
Hi, I am Dinah.
I was the only daughter in a house of 12 sons. My story is often told through the lens of the pain I suffered and the violence my brothers committed in my name. For a long time, I felt like a footnote in a history of men. But in the silence, I found a God who doesn't just see the great leaders, he sees the broken daughters. He saw my tears, and he knew my name when the world only knew my tragedy. I am a reminder that your worth is not defined by what happened to you. My story ends with this. Man may forget the daughter, but God never forgets his child.
Hi, I'm Tamar. I am the woman who refused to be erased from the story. I married into the line of Judah, but after being widowed twice and cast aside by a father-in-law who feared me, I was left with nothing. I sat in the dust of the roadside, disguised and desperate, taking a massive risk to claim the legacy that was rightfully mine. I held up the staff and the seal of Judah and forced him to face the truth. I was declared more righteous than the man who judged me. I gave birth to the twins, Perez and Zerah, securing the royal line that leads directly to the Messiah. Don't let the failures of others stop your destiny. He is the Redeemer, just like he was for me.
Hi, I'm Potiphar. I was the captain of Pharaoh's guard, a man of power, discipline, and order. I bought a Hebrew slave named Joseph, and I quickly realized that whatever he touched turned to gold. I put my entire household in his hands, because the blessing on his life was undeniable. But my story took a dark turn when my own wife's lies forced me to throw my most trusted servant into a dungeon. I was caught between my honor and a deception I couldn't see through. My part of the story is the bridge between the pit and the palace. I learned that God's favorites often find favor even in the house of a stranger. Watch for the blessing in those who serve you. He is the true master, just like I eventually saw.
Hi, I'm Pharaoh. I was the living god of the greatest empire on earth. Yet, I was haunted by dreams I couldn't understand. Cows and grain that predicted a world-ending famine. None of my wise men could help me, until a prisoner was brought from the depths of the earth. Joseph didn't just interpret my dreams, he gave me a plan to save my people. I took the ring from my finger and made a Hebrew slave the second most powerful man in the world. I am the one who invited Jacob's family into the land of Goshen, giving them the best of Egypt while the world went hungry. My story proves that God can use the highest throne to protect his smallest family. Listen to the wisdom of the Spirit, no matter where it comes from. He is the King of Kings, just like he was for me.
Hi, I'm Manasseh. I am the firstborn of Joseph, born in the luxury of Egypt while my father's homeland was a distant memory. My name means making to forget. My birth was the moment my father finally found peace, saying, God has made me forget all my trouble and all my father's household. I represent the closure of old wounds and the healing of a broken heart. When my grandfather Jacob blessed us, he placed me under his left hand, not because I was less, but because God's plan often defies our traditions. My tribe became a massive legacy, stretching across both sides of the Jordan River. My story is about the grace of moving forward. Let God heal the memories that hold you back. He is the comforter, just like he was for me.
Hi, I'm Ephraim. I am the second son, but in the kingdom of God, the last is often moved to the first. My name means twice fruitful. I was born because my father realized that God didn't just want him to survive his suffering, he wanted him to thrive in it. I am the one Jacob chose for the greater blessing, crossing his arms to place his right hand on my head. I represent the suddenly favor of God that ignores birth order and human logic. My tribe became so prominent but my name eventually became a symbol for the entire northern kingdom of Israel. My story proves that your position today doesn't limit where God can take you tomorrow. Step into the favor you didn't earn. He is the multiplier, just like he was for me.